Thank you, Victoria. That's beautifully done. Truly one of my favorite scriptures. Truly, probably at the core of my faith. And I know for many of you it might be similar or the same. We are called to see Jesus in other people. And I had the most unique opportunity to do that on Friday. I had the opportunity to preside over a funeral, and many of you might think that must be so hard. And there are parts of it that are hard if one's afraid of crying. It can be very hard, but it's so beautiful. I had the opportunity to preside over a celebration of life for a woman who lived her life spreading seeds of kindness. She taught her 4 children that it was very important to be kind before it was even a thing. Don't get me wrong, it's always been a thing, but do you know what I mean, right? She taught her 4 children how inclusivity and welcome is so vitally important. They shared with me a story that when she was growing up as a Protestant in Massachusetts, she was told that she wasn't allowed to associate with her Catholic friends, her Catholic best friend, but she did it anyway. And that friend became the godmother of all 4 of her children, and to this day is part of her family. They told me stories about their home being the place that everyone went. You know that place? You know the one that maybe when you were growing up that all the kids congregated at? Do you remember that feeling? Well, as they were explaining this to me, I asked them, what was it? What was it that compelled all of your friends and you to gather at your house? And they thought about it, and they said it was an inner peace. It was the truth that no matter what we did or didn't do, we were loved, we were accepted, and so were our friends. So when their friends went through challenges with their parents, some more than others, they were all taken in at this house. Many friends lived there for a while. They shared an experience of realizing that after 59 years of marriage, their parents really loved one another. So much so that in the last few years of her life, the last few weeks of her life, that while she loved getting visits from her kids, it was the visit from her husband that mattered the most, the one that fueled her. And they would sit for long hours just holding hands. And on Friday, as the family sat before me, the 3 adult men and 1 adult daughter with their dad, and I began talking to them and everyone gathered at graveside, I looked down and all 5 of them were holding hands. And I knew in that moment Marcia was smiling. They held hands through the whole service together. Truly one of the most beautiful and remarkable experiences, and an expression of what we're talking about today, the cup of compassion. This passage isn't just about helping people and being nice. There's a sense of righteousness. As we heard Victoria read that so beautifully, we heard of the sheep helping Jesus without even knowing they were helping Jesus. They didn't really understand what Jesus was talking about. And he said, of course, as you know, if you this might be familiar to you, it might not be, but whenever you help those, the least of these is a way that it's said, or I think in this particular scripture that we use today, whenever you helped the, anyone remember the 2 words? It was someone overlooked or ignored, then you were helping me. Jesus was talking about that sense of serving without response, or like not a tit for tat kind of keeping score kind of way. That sense of service and compassion that stems from a desire and a love for humanity. Jesus was telling us that it wasn't really about right belief unless there is a right way of living that belief out. We've all heard, those folks who say, I found Jesus, I'm saved, I've got Jesus in my heart, glory be. And I don't mean to say that sarcastically like that sounded. It probably sounded sarcastic. But what I mean to say is, and okay, so what are you doing with that? How does your life change when Jesus is in your heart? I think that's what we're talking about today. And we've been talking about different cups each week, right? This week being the cup of compassion. I think this one is more literal than others, where it is sometimes a cup of compassion, or the type of service we're talking about is literally giving someone a drink, or acknowledging someone, or listening to someone, or having people introducing to people who could benefit from knowing one another. The cup of compassion, that acknowledgement of the humanity in another person. And I invited Scott to share some stories with us today, and as we're about to move into what Scott's going to share, Scott has a little video. So for those of you that don't know, Scott Dempsey and his wife Venus, who's sitting in the front, they lead a team on Monday nights, and the team includes a few other volunteers as well. Julie, sitting in the back, is one of them. And they go to Rochester and they serve cooked meals to people who do not have a home. And it's a lot of work. They spend a lot of time planning those meals. They're here all afternoon on Monday preparing the meals. Sometimes they're here on Sunday getting things ready for Monday. But it's a work of love. So let's see a little video from one of the evenings that they were in Rochester.
Hey Johnny, husband and wife here, Matt and Nicole. Just want to give a big shout out. Say thank you very much for the hot soup and the warm meal. We really appreciate it.
Woo! Thank you.
From
Awesome.
all of us to you, we thank you.
All right. How's the soup over here, guys?
Awesome.
Yep, spicy. Got a spice to it and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Guys liking it? All right, guys.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You guys are welcome. Hey, guys, little video clip. Everybody say hello.
Hello!
This amazing team we got, and we got the ham over there. You know what I mean? Slick Willie. I don't know. We got a million. We got a million names for that one. You know what I mean? And I love your hat. You know, the hat. She's styling.
It's like a river hat, like yours.
His wifey and Jackie over there. She's got. Look at the clothes she's got organized.
That's right.
I can't even explain it. Everything's got labels on it and everything. Jackie, give a shout out to us all out here. We say thank you, Jesus, to everything here.
Would you like a hot dog?
Guys, have a great night and God bless.
Thank you.
Awesome. So Scott, tell us, like, how do you do what you do? Talk about the cup of compassion from your perspective.
First of all, I'd just like to say hello to everybody at church. Well, first, we have a great team, I have to say, and God really put that team together. He's just lined everything up, his chessboard, and one by one puts the people in place, everything together in place to make these things happen. And if you've got that willing heart, it's just really amazing. If you have that willing heart, he will provide for you. All of us are capable of showing kindness and doing all these things ourselves every day, everywhere, every minute, like even when someone buys you coffee and just that kindness and compassion. But this is all about just where our hearts are now. We just love going out there, building relationships with people, the friendships that we build, the hope that's restored throughout the community. People want change. People are coming to Christ. We're not forcing anything down their throats or anything like that. We lay some little wooden crosses out for people and such like that. And if somebody wants to engage in a Christ-like conversation, we will. But we don't force anything. We're just out there to be friends and show that compassion. You know, most of all, I'd probably say my wife would agree with me is acknowledgement. People so desperate out there, unhoused and lost, looking for something, and just acknowledging them that they're human beings and children of God, and that they have purpose still, and that develops. It develops and it grows, and before you know it, hopefully all of Rochester is going to be walking around wearing these crosses. They're being picked up. That's how we know things are working out there. People are coming to Christ because we know 5 or 6 Bibles are taken every night, little pocket Bibles, and crosses and the engagement and everything like that. We just have a real good time,
So how did you, sometimes it's scary. I've talked to people that said, oh my gosh, I would never know what to say or to do. I couldn't, even working in the food pantry, or, how did you come to have such a heart for being compassionate? And you're out there working with people that are unhoused, but you do other things too beyond the Rochester job that you do, or the Rochester mission. It's kind of your way of life. Any day of the week I could find you in here trailing someone behind you who needs food. How do you move that from just Sunday or Monday to your whole way of being?
Well, first of all, we all have testimonies, we all have stories, and mine may be a little bit different than everybody else's, but we're all the same. There are times in our lives that we're in broken places. We have indwelling things that that we are broken, and I had a time in my life, I guess you could call it Damascus Road moment, where Saul kind of became Paul. And in that I learned from my past. God just through our brokenness, through our experiences in the past, he brings us to a place, I guess you could say he prepares us along the way. Even through those difficult times, we learn and we grow. And it just kind of developed into, I had an experience where it changed my life, and I gave myself to Christ. And when I surrendered everything and gave myself to Christ, I jokingly had said, I work for you now. Be careful out there what you say sometimes. And 3 days later, he put his first person in front of my path. And I shared with him what I felt, how Christ came into my life as I surrendered. And that was the first time somebody asked me to pray for them for salvation. And I was like, I don't know how to pray lay hands on people, and I wasn't equipped to do these things, I thought. And we talked, prayed for him. He came to Christ. That was 3 days after I had my experience. And from there, it just kept growing, where every time I stopped at a convenience store, and it might have happened to anybody in church, somebody comes up and says, sir, could you spare 50 cents? And what's 50 cents going to do? No, we want to give them $5 or something like that. But, it's an opportunity in every one of those experiences. And it happened sometimes 3 times a day, or at 10 o'clock at night, I'm at a Dunkin' Donuts, and I'm like, why am I here? And it was, I was waiting for God to, kind of, that person was going to come. And it would just develop into a good conversation, a friendship, and then a relationship. And that person eventually would, either come to Christ, or if they were in a substance abuse situation, they would ask for help. And what we do is we don't just feed on Monday nights. If somebody needs a resource, if they need to go to a substance abuse place, if they need to, I say it all starts with a coffee and a donut, And from there, it just grows. And when they gain that trust from you, they finally say, okay, let's do this. Mm-hmm. And it develops into, we're all going to walk into eternity, each other. All of us are going to be together someday. And, meeting people on the streets, having that opportunity to speak some hope into them. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, we'll be together for the rest of eternity.
Mm-hmm. Speaking hope, and when we say them, the least of these, the overlooked, the ignored, could really be any of us. we were talking about this earlier, and I said, I think today I'm the least of these. I don't feel very good, and Scott's covering me if I pass out up here. I'm not really going to, but Scott said, I'll cover you. If you don't feel good, I've got you covered. And I think that's the important thing, is that we're not just talking about someone else. We're not just talking about an unhomed person in Rochester or someone who has a substance use disorder. We're talking about every person, humanity, and that includes ourselves. And I notice working with lots of people, those who eagerly accept help and those who very much don't accept help, that I find sometimes the most compassionate people, i.e. people sitting in the pews here sometimes, or others who have a life of service, will not accept help. And I'm always like, look, this friend of mine said something to me, and it's my friend Pastor Jeff, if you guys know him. So many of you have worshiped with him when he's been here. And we were having a fundraiser for our church, and he sent a donation to our church from his church. And his church is struggling more than our church. And I called Jeff and I said, oh my goodness, I can't accept this. Your church needs this. And he said, don't you take away my blessing of giving. And I think that's such an important thing to hold on to. It's helped me a lot as someone who has a hard time accepting help sometimes myself. Don't you take away my blessing of giving, right? It is a blessing to give. It's a blessing to receive. But sometimes, if you're a giver, it's hard to be a receiver, right? I was doing some research on this topic, and I was listening to a TED Talk that a friend sent me, and it was about givers and takers. And it was saying how there's really actually three ways that this kind of works out across the general populace. There's givers, takers, and matchers. Most people are matchers. Like over 50% of people, according to this study, are matchers, which means it's a give-take proposition. It's a give-and-take relationship. That's not a bad thing necessarily. I guess it's better than just being a taker. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about giving just to give, not necessarily expecting anything in return, right? And how there's that joy, that peace that passes all understanding, like that kind of peace you might find at Marcia's house I was talking about earlier, when you're around someone who just gives for no other reason.
If I can add to that, I just really think as we sit with him and more of our quiet time, with that cup of coffee in the morning, the more we sit with him and that we're in relationship with him, I think that it is something where it becomes a natural outflowing from us, as it should be. We all have our moments where we yell at the guy that didn't use his blinker or something like that on the highway or everything. We're all guilty. I could ask for a show of hands, and I'm sure all the hands would go up in here for that.
Well, then they have two things. They have to deal with lying and that, right?
So, that natural outflowing as we sit with our Father, in relationship, I think that's where that you become more of a giver than expecting to receive anything back. You know what I mean? I always joke with my wife, as far as like that, sometimes we expect acknowledgement and everything, and my acknowledgement comes from him only, you know what I mean, in everything. But I think it's just, it should come from us, just from that place of him who did everything for us, And I just wanted to add one more thing too, if I could, on one of the things I find that's really interesting, and I love it, is that when we started this, Venus and I were brought together, which was amazing. We were brought to this cute little town up here, and I love our community. And why we were brought here, I had been up in Rochester a few times and doing some work, and I seen the difficulties and the struggles up there. So we were brought here, and then as the food pantry, took place, as that grew, we were drawn more to that area. And the food pantry, it's amazing how God provides us. The food pantry, we use the food pantry food to feed the people up in Rochester. Now that's God providing for us along the way. As long as you're willing, he'll provide. And the same thing with the thrift store. The thrift store, I mean, Jackie had everything labeled, large, small, everything's just, what comes out of that is the outpouring to the other people too. Mm-hmm. So I just love how like God, it just really sits well with me that God provides everything for us. He has plans for us all.
I always say we are the hands and feet of Christ, right? Like enabling God's work in this world through the generosity in this community. Yeah, the hands and feet. So what if we put it out there for someone who might be challenged to maybe find time in their schedule, or maybe get over their fears of social anxiety or talking to other people, or what's one word of advice that you would give to someone who might be struggling, saying, yeah, it's good for you, Scott, and that's great, like to see what you do up there, but I'm never going to go to Rochester, I'm never going to do that, or I'm never going to fill in the blank. What would you say, one word?
Well,
two words.
I mean, I think, there's always that place where we want to have safety involved with anybody that you may talk to, whether it's somebody on the street or, we have a little bit, or we're guarded a little bit, to be careful, boundaries in place and such like that. But we have one life to live. Why not be kind? We have, two hands to give, I just say, step out of that place that you're in fear of, and just be really, really comfortable and just get to know people, be natural. It'll be just a natural outflowing to whoever you come in contact with, wherever, whenever, just be in tune. Just be in tune to what he has in store for us.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm gonna double up the challenge on that a little bit. So step out there in strength and trust and courage and faith. What if we do an experiment this week? What if we intentionally imagine every person we meet this week as Jesus? Every single person. Imagine that they're Jesus. Or maybe every single person you meet for a day. Okay, I'll go easy. For one day, what would that change for you? How would it change about how we treat that person? Especially if that person's cutting you off in traffic. Imagine that's Jesus behind the wheel. Compassion is mercy in action, and that's what we're talking about today. To move from this place and to consider what it would look like if we were looking for Christ's presence in the world and in the people that we meet. If we took time to listen and be encouraging. So may it be so, my friends, as we're moving to the end of our conversation. May it be so. You move from this place with a sense of faith and confidence to reach out in service to another. Amen. Thank you, Scott.